there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and it doesn't take long before I'm doing another haul. I always feel like I've done a haul and then another one comes along, but that's just the way that my life is in terms of books coming into my house. Some people have other things that come into their house more often, but for me it is books. So the books I've got here are ones that I've either bought myself, I've had on pre-order, or I've been very kindly gifted by the lovely Janet as part of our Bookopoly, not Bookopoly anymore because that was last year, but as part of our sort of buying each other a book every month. So I'm going to start with the books that I got in book boxes. The first one is called Perfectly Preventable Deaths, and it's by Deirdre Sullivan. So on the back of this book, the very kind Hotkey Books always put a bit of a sort of gauge for you to see what's in it, and here the three things are sisters, sacrifice and witchcraft. And it looks from reading the blurb on this that it's about two sisters. They've moved to a town, a really small isolated town where girls go missing. I think it's girls, teenage girls have gone missing for generations. They've moved to this town. They're very different from each other. One is more outgoing and one is much more used to being in the other's shadow, and then they move to this town and things change. One of them falls in love and the other one discovers some sort of powers, and I think we're going to sort of go into a bit of a mystical witchcrafty world. I don't know much more than that, but it sounds like it's a really interesting one actually. And I think the cover of this, I don't know if you can see it really well, it's this sort of jar with these different sort of elements in. I just think looks really lovely, and so I'm looking forward to giving this one a go. And in that box there was some other goodies. One of the things that I thought was really pretty is this, which is a coaster, and it's got this really beautiful piece of artwork on, which I think looks gorgeous. So I'm really loving that. And also there was a second book in this time, and that is Tangleweed and Brine, which is also by Deirdre Sullivan, and this has got a beautiful cover as well. So this is a book Deirdre maybe wrote of fairy tales and retellings of fairy tales with sort of really strong heroines, so I think that this is going to be a really fun read, maybe to read alongside the other book. We went very briefly away. We ended up having a couple of occasional days from school. My husband took a couple of days off and we had sort of a 4-day trip, and we went down to my parents' house. They've got a house in Dorset, and we just love going there when we can. It's a great place to be as a family, but we always have, whatever holiday we go on, whether it's going through an airport or just driving down the motorway, we always end up stopping because, you know, if you've got kids, you know, you've got to stop for wheeze and, you know, just a bit of a break, and we always end up either buying ourselves a magazine or something, or something was it this time. I ended up buying myself a book. There was a book I wanted. It was on the buy one get one half price, and obviously I'm a target audience for that, and ended up picking up 2 books. So one was one I definitely wanted, the other one quite intrigued by, and the lady that worked on the till was like, oh, it's brilliant, I read it in a day, it's really good. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So the first one I picked up is called Talking with Serial Killers, and it's by Christopher Berry Dee. Now you might recognise that author's name because I picked up another book which I'm actually reading. If you've seen my July TBR, I'm actually reading this month, and it is called Talking with Psychopaths and Savages, and so this is written by the same person, and I just think it's it sounded intriguing. It's about more specifically serial killers, and it says that he's talked to many of them around the world, and it's this is collated interviews that he's had with these serial killers. So I just think, yeah, my fascination with this is never ending, and so I'd really like to read those 2 books one after the other perhaps. So perhaps it's one that I'm going to end up trying to get onto my August TBR, who knows. And the other one that I picked up, which is #1 in the WH Smith's, this particular WH Smith's chart, is by an author you may recognise, E.L. James, the author of the 50 Shades of Grey series, and this is the new one called The Mister, and I was intrigued. like, I know that everyone has these sort of problems with some of the older books, like you have your Twilight, and 50 Shades of Grey is one of those ones that a lot of people have problems with because of the writing not being sort of what they consider good. They have problematic aspects between how the BDSM angle is tackled, and I can't speak to that side because it's not something that I'm into personally. You know, if you're into that, I'm not saying that I think it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not something that is that does it for me. But yeah, I can't speak to that. But I did find it quite an enjoyable read, the 50 Shades of Grey books. So I apologise if that offends anybody. But I quite liked the books when I read them, and you know, they were okay. I wouldn't say they were great, they weren't amazing, I wasn't going to be giving them 5 stars, but I quite enjoyed them when I read them. And I was just intrigued by this because everyone seems to be coming back having some really positive feedback on it. So this is set in London and also moves down to Cornwall. It's about a male member of the aristocracy, never really had to work too much, a bit of a playboy, sleeps around, that sort of stereotype. And then his fascination with someone that comes over to England, I'm not sure where from, and his sort of fascination with her and this sort of romance, I suppose, that happens. There's bound to be some steamy, sexy times. So yeah, I'll let you know what I think of it once I've read it. The other one came from a magazine that I've been reading recently, and I will be talking about it in my favourites. I'm going to do a favourites video. It's not something I've ever done before, but I'm going to give it a go, and you'll have to let me know if it's something you want me to do in future. I always think, well, who'd be interested in finding out what I've been enjoying, but then they're one of my favourite videos to watch, so go figure. But I read about this in that magazine, and it just sounded really interesting, and it's called The Prison Doctor by Dr. Amanda Brown. It's a non-fiction account of Dr. Amanda Brown and how she treated inmates in some of UK's most infamous prisons, and it's about what life is like being a prison doctor, some of the things that she came across, and I just think it's fascinating, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this and finding out a bit more. The next books were very kindly gifted to me from Janet, which, oh, she's such a sweetie. She always spoils me, and she always knows the right books to pick. she just must know me really well. The first one she's picked is Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett. I've really been enjoying Jen Bennett's work. I have read Alex Approximately, which I really enjoyed. I've got another book on my shelf by her. In fact, I think I've got 2 books on my shelf, which I really must get to. But this one says it's about best friends turned worst enemies, Zori and Lennon, who've made an art of avoiding each other. But when a group camping trip goes south, Zori and Lennon find themselves stranded in the wilderness, alone, together. What could possibly go wrong? As the two travel deeper into the wilderness, fighting each other as well as the forces of nature, secrets and hidden feelings surface, but can they make their way to safety, and will Zori and Lennon's rekindled connections survive out in the real world? So I just think that sounds like it's going to be a really interesting one, and I hope it's tackled well. I'm sure it is. I really like how Jen writes, so that one is a really good pick by her. And then the other one is one that I heard about quite a lot a little while ago, and then I haven't heard so much about more recently, and that is To Best the Boys by Mary Webber. So I think this the basic premise of this story is that it's set in a fantasy world where boys compete to enter this esteemed university. It's set in a world where women aren't, you know, expected to or allowed to go and do things like train and have an education. They're expected to sort of go into wifely duties. And our main character is really wants to be a scientist. She wants to be able to enter this competition to get into this university. And so I'm sure she's going to some sort of trickery in order to get in. I don't know. She's going to pit herself into this competition somehow, but I'm looking forward to reading it and finding out more. And then the final 3 books are ones that I either had on pre-order for myself or that I picked up just because I fancied it. The first one, I can't remember where I saw it. I think I saw it on like a recommended, it might have been recommended to me on Goodreads or something like that, or maybe when I was searching for something. But it is a graphic memoir, which I love, and it's called Calling Dr. Laura by Nicola J. Georges, and it's huge. It's really big compared to, like, you know, your average size. That's a hardback, so it's quite a big book, and it is black and white, which is okay. I don't mind that, and it's an interesting sort of art style. But it was the premise that really drew me into this one. So in a nutshell, what this is about is what happened in her life. At the age of 2, she was told that her father was dead, and then at the age of 23 she saw a psychic who told her that yes, the man she thought was her father was dead, but actually that wasn't her real father and her real father was alive. She then spent years questioning her identity, trying to discover, you know, why this psychic said this. She had this nagging feeling that maybe she was adopted or something was different about her, and eventually years later her sister actually confessed and said yes, that her real father wasn't the father that she thought, and this unravels and she starts discovering more about her real self. So I just thought that sounded really interesting, and something that I really wanted to read about, written from someone who's been through that experience. I just thought it was an interesting experience to find out about. Now the next one is really one of those sort of second chances for me. Everyone raves about this author's first book, and I DNF'd it. I really couldn't get through it, and that is The Poet's X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It just wasn't for me. I couldn't get on with it. I think I'm the only person in the world that hasn't got on with it, but yet the premise of her latest book really sounds much more up my street, and it's not written in verse, which I think is something that I just really struggle with, and I don't seem to be able to do. So this one that I've picked up is With the Fire on High. This is something that really drew me in terms of the premise. Oh my god, I love the naked hardback of this. Isn't it awesome? I didn't know that was, oh, I really love that. So if you haven't guessed, this book is about food. So I think what this book is about is a young girl. She gets pregnant in her freshman year, and so her life changes dramatically. I think she might live with her grandmother, but she's always had this passion for cooking and creating food and creating meals, but she kind of feels like because she's been pregnant and she's now got a child that she has to shelf her dreams, and I think this is going to be her exploring how to keep her dreams, or how to fulfill her dreams when maybe the life has not gone differently to how you expect. So I'm really looking forward to this one now. I think the premise of this sounds much more up my street. The fact it's not written in verse really appeals to me, so fingers crossed my second foray with this author will go well. And then the final book that I picked up for myself is a romance which I just ticked the boxes when I read the blurb, and that is Small Town Hearts by Lily Vale. It's a romance. I believe our character might be bisexual. It's about that time between school and college, and that transition and the changes and how friendships can change. I love the fact that it's set in Maine. I thought, you know, that's a place that really appeals to me, that idea. It's set in Maine and she works as a barista. I like the idea that I get the impression that maybe she isn't going off to college and her life is being slightly different to others, which I think is going to be interesting. And I just thought it sounded like a really sweet, lovely read, and I've been hearing good things about from people who have read it. So ow I'm determined to hurt myself. These books keep flying. Oh, that really hurt. Oh, apologise if my eyes are watering now. This book is desperate to be read, so maybe I have to add it to my TBR sooner rather than later, before it does me an injury. Anyway, that is the books that I bought recently or been gifted. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. And as always, let's chat in the comments down below, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.